appears to be 8:30, and so we're going to get started. Good morning, and thank you for being here, and thank those of you tuning in via live stream. If it seems that we were just together for a board meeting, we were, just a few short weeks ago. For that reason, I anticipate today's meeting will flow quickly. But let's collectively knock on wood just in case. As we open our final board meeting of the calendar year, I want to thank everyone for their effort and hard work. While reflecting on my remarks for today, I received a holiday video card from Chancellor Perman. I think we all should have received that message. But this year's message was so eloquently and powerfully spoke to our shared existence, and I think it's worth reviewing again. And so can we play the video?
As each year draws to a close, I think about what we do here at the University System of Maryland. But just as important as what we do is who we are. We are a community of choice. We don't share a single history or an identity or a background. Our stories aren't one story. They're more than 1 million strong. But we do share a mission: to make the leaders who will solve the problems we haven't, to make the knowledge that changes what we believe and what we believe is possible. We do share certain convictions: that learning is the way we light our path, that service is the price of our humanity, that we are made to be curious and creative and compassionate. We share a foundational belief that what we are now is nothing compared to what we will be. From many communities, we are one, a community of hope, of strength, of optimism, of joy. Happy New Year to the community I choose every single day.
Well said, Chancellor. And yes, as we enter the new year with new opportunities and new challenges, let us embrace the ideal that we are a community with a shared mission and a community of hope, strength, and optimism. Thank you, Chancellor Perman. This week, many of our regents brought greetings to winter commencement ceremonies across the system. 6 universities had 9 ceremonies with over 12,500 students earning their degrees. What a great holiday gift and start to the new year. Congratulations to our graduates, their families, and friends. The knowledge and experience that they've earned at our universities will build brighter futures for their graduates, their loved ones, and their communities. So now turning to the agenda, and following the period of public comment, we will hear from our hosts this morning, the University of Maryland Global Campus. And after that, we will hold the educational forum and then hear from Chancellor Perman and the other advisory councils. So it's now time for public comment, and Ms. Wilkerson will moderate the session. Ms. Wilkerson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Each regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Regents will include a period for public comment. In accordance with the guidelines for public comment posted on our website, the agenda will include 15 minutes set aside for this purpose. Requests should be submitted 48 hours before the meeting. We have one request that was submitted. I want to note that the board fully dedicates the period of public comment to the speakers and will not respond to questions or comments during the meeting. As needed, any follow-up will take place afterwards. Today, we have one request for public comment who is here. We have Professor Justin Dunmeyer, Chair of the Frostburg State University Faculty Senate.
Good morning.
Morning.
Faculty are suffering at Frostburg State University. As chair of the faculty, I'd like to share my perspective of how we got here and the role that I hope you can play in helping FSU rise again. After many years of struggle under our administration, we resolved to conduct a vote of no confidence. Before the vote was conducted, the retrenchment of FSU faculty was announced. When CUSIF was informed of our retrenchment, they carried a resolution that is in the CUSIF chair's report. Things have not improved since our vote of no confidence. The faculty do not have faith in our administration to make sweeping, permanent curricular decisions. Indeed, for many faculty, the recent CUSIF resolution has been a highlight because it was a show of support from outside of FSU. We have not felt much support from outside, and we hope and we continue to not only be the lowest funded school in the system, but disproportionately so. That said, I personally am bolstered by my recent meeting with Chancellor Perman, in which he indicated that he continues to work towards strengthening FSU's leadership now and in the future. I hope I can bring more faculty along in that hope, but we've had a particularly difficult semester, a cap to many years of struggle. Retrenchment anywhere is a difficult process, but at FSU it has been harder than it needed to be. The administration consistently reduced the voice of shared governance before and during the retrenchment process. You might recall from our vote of no confidence that we have struggled with effective communication. The administration's communication regarding retrenchment has been fraught, to say the least. FSU's faculty have often expressed concerns about the finances of the institution, which brought us to the point of retrenchment. Indeed, our administration has not been as successful as our system counterparts in securing funding from the state and system. So, as we look forward to strengthened leadership and trusted leadership, as called for in the CUSIF resolution and assured by the Chancellor, I hope that you can recognize our need for presidential leadership that respects shared governance and doesn't seem to see faculty as a necessary nuisance, strives for effective communication and transparency, and will advocate for FSU securing financial support for us so that we are no longer so drastically underfunded. I hope that you can agree that while retrenchment will always be difficult, we have suffered more for this administration's leadership. As the Chancellor wrote in his report, FSU is indispensable to Western Maryland, and it is of the essence that we protect it. The FSU faculty live and breathe this role, and supporting our students is at the center of all things. For the sake of our students, I hope that I have impressed upon you that the FSU faculty feel that the future of FSU cannot be stable until we have leadership that is strong in all the areas I mentioned today. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Dunmeyer. We will now hear from Dr. Gregory Fowler, President of the University of Maryland Global Campus.
Thank you, Chair Gooden, and to you, Chancellor Perman, and all of our colleagues, welcome back to UMGC. It is wonderful to have you here. This past year has certainly been filled with challenges, opportunities, and success. It was gratifying to see the hard work of our UMGC team yield our largest fall term start in almost 80 years of operation. This year, UMGC will help more than 95,000 learners transform their lives, including more than 33,000 right here in Maryland. Just last week at our winter commencement, we celebrated more than 9,500 new graduates, bringing our total graduates for the year to more than 15,000, another record. We have successfully opened or expanded new educational locations nationally in Hawaii, North Dakota, South Carolina, Texas, and overseas in Japan, Belgium, Jordan, Romania, Poland, and the United Kingdom. Our faculty have led on the ground field studies in dozens of cities across Europe and Asia, including in Berlin, Seoul, Dublin, Florence, Rome, Naples, and the battlefields of Okinawa. Affordability and accessibility continue to be key elements of our mission, and many of our corporate partnerships are designed to keep students out of debt by having employers cover their tuition. These partnerships span many industries, including communications, entertainment, education, food production and food services, healthcare, and more. For example, under our partnership with Guild, we can extend learning opportunities at little or no out-of-pocket cost to personnel of major employers like Discover, Chipotle, Pershing Enterprises, and Tyson Foods. And agreements with Dorchester County and Harford County Public School Districts in Maryland allow their employees to pursue a UMGC Master of Arts in Teaching or Master of Educational Instructional Technology at a reduced tuition rate, which further augments the tuition assistance offered to teachers, particularly those who are conditionally certified and pursuing Maryland certification. This past year, UMGC awarded more than $21 million in institutional scholarships and grants, almost $19 million of which went to more than 9,200 Maryland residents. And we don't talk enough about how proud we are that this past year we welcomed 774 students, up 26% since 2023, under USM's Golden ID program, which allows retired Marylanders 60 years of age or older to take classes tuition-free. Military learners represent another key demographic, and we were proud to grant approximately $164,000 to 25 individuals under a smaller but nonetheless significant program, our Pillars of Strength program, which covers the full cost of a degree for the caretakers of wounded, injured, or ill military veterans. From the time that program was established in 2013, 84 learners have received full scholarships, including a record 14 just this year, and 30 have already graduated. We continue to seek ways to close achievement gaps for various learner populations, and we are proud to have secured a multi-year, multi-million-dollar grant from the Gates Foundation and another from the Department of Labor focused on closing equity gaps and integrating apprenticeships into our portfolio offerings. The advantages that come with operating almost 200 locations in more than 20 countries and territories and serving a deeply diverse population of learners also include certain challenges. Our faculty and other team members in the Middle East and Mediterranean have become accustomed to middle-of-the-night sirens and ready-to-deploy orders. Our technology teams in Europe have improved the reliability of learning networks by leveraging satellite connectivity. And our teams in Asia have launched new learning credentials, allowing students, local communities, and businesses to upskill and seize new opportunities. Recently, our student success teams launched our first AI assistant, empowering our staff to engage more effectively with each learner. UMGC does pride itself on innovation, but when I consider the Latin mottos that many schools adopt, I have to think that the one that would best capture UMGC's essence would be id invenius, which basically translates to figure it out. No school can be all things to all stakeholders, but I am forever in awe of our UMGC team, which manages to be so many things to so many different people, many of whom don't see how they can succeed, yet find themselves empowered to change their own destinies, as well as those of their families and their communities. Now, of course, I could stand here for hours sharing examples of the great work going on across our institution to help make it so unique, but instead I will ask for just a few minutes more to share one video that highlights a little of what we've been up to in the past year.
UMGC's history is rooted in innovation and identifying new ways to help every learner, wherever they may be, achieve their goals.
I think that increasingly UMGC is viewed as a leader in this space, and we're happy and proud to be able to do what we can to collaborate and to support the other institutions. That's one of the things that's great about being part of a university system like we are here in Maryland.
All of us know something about UMGC. Some of us have taken courses there or graduated from there. What I love about UMGC is they were online before it was cool. They've led it for decades, they're leading it today, and we're just very proud of them.
I want us to continue to evolve. I want us to keep going because we provide an education opportunity for many disadvantaged students, and we also transform their lives.
We are leveraging AI and machine learning. This tool will allow our success coaches to prioritize the things that they're talking to the students about, help identify issues through data and the outreach that they do with the students that need the most help in that given moment.
Cybersecurity Professor Jason Pittman is the first UMGC faculty member to receive a Fulbright Distinguished Chair Award, the program's most prestigious appointment.
Because of UMGC's global international presence, and its flexibility both for students, staff, and faculty, I've been afforded this phenomenal opportunity. It's such a high achievement for an academic particularly if you're in a field like computer science, cybersecurity, AI. And I'll be at the University of Adelaide in South Australia for 6 months at their AI Machine Learning Research Institute. Through this project, I'll be able to help start to build those bridges and build something even bigger for us, for our students, and for the global community.
Our goal is really to break down barriers and provide pathways to students, especially those in communities or regions where post-secondary education is not as accessible. Through live streamings, we can reach learners in smaller communities. We've generated partnerships with virtual high schools in order to allow those high school students to continue to learn in their modality of choice.
Additionally, UMGC's 3D Scholars program enables Prince George's County Public High School students to earn their associates and then a bachelor's for less than $10,000. UMGC continues to make education accessible by opening multiple locations, both stateside and worldwide, to serve students.
We're really trying to meet our learners where they are, figuratively and literally.
One of our tasks that we take very seriously is this warm handoff between the divisions. I know that you came from Korea. The coordinator there gave me your information. We can keep you progressing on your education journey here at Fort Hood. And so you can see that experience for the student would be much more seamless. You can see how then the chances for that student to be successful increases simply because the care of that student is more successful.
We are in the midst of transitioning our 4-term graduate programs to a 3-term structure. All of our students will be on one academic calendar, and that allows us to reduce the complexity in our operation and provide a better experience for our learners.
UMGC students, faculty, and staff around the world have faced a variety of challenges in the last couple of years, including deployments around the Mediterranean, supporting service members in new locations in Poland, and sheltering in place while fulfilling missions in the Middle East.
Education is kind of an outlet for many of these military members. They're on deployments. Even when they have a day off and they take that uniform off, they are still on. I've had the opportunity to use the live stream technology that really has been very, very helpful to reach those students who are forward deployed. The biggest challenge, I would say, is kind of the uncertainty. There's a noise going off. Do I need to pay attention to that? Especially when you're sitting in a classroom with students, and I realize they're adults, but as a teacher, I still feel responsible for a class of 19 students. At the end of the day, they are here to serve our country. I'm here to serve them.
Our learners are coming to us with very specific goals in mind. They want to know that the learning that they're doing right now is relevant, that it is something that will help them advance their career goals. We've spent the last several months developing AI bots that can help to automate some of the early stages of the design of a course. So helping us to identify what should the course learning outcomes be and how do we translate that into the skills that our learners are seeking.
UMGC is also focused on saving students time and money, including 4-day field studies in Europe, 4-week intersessions in multiple locations, and a variety of innovative scholarships and opportunities to earn credit for experience.
And we're really proud of the field study program. It's a very unique situation, something that we can do that hardly any other school can do. And we do it affordably. Every student that I've ever heard from who's taken a field study talk about what a great learning experience that is.
During this 4-week period in the winter where initially for the overseas personnel, if they're not able to go home, what better way to use their time furthering their educations? They get the same amount of credit as if they were taking an 8-week course. For those that are motivated, why not bring something that's been working successfully for the university overseas in Europe and Asia to our stateside operations as well?
And since 2017, we have offered more than 15,000 completion scholarships to Maryland residents. And this is specifically available for learners who have completed an associate's degree at one of the Maryland community colleges. And so long as that was their last institution of enrollment before they come to UMGC, we will honor that community college tuition rate for the remainder of credits to earn their bachelor's degree. So we're really driving home the affordability factor there.
There's got to be some way to identify what skills are they actually obtaining at each of these different military schools, and how does that translate into some of the skills we say that students will graduate with if they took a course in organizational leadership, et cetera? When you look at it from that standpoint, you realize that there has to be a way to give them some credit for their prior learning experiences that they have.
UMGC students are everywhere, including some of the most remote locations on the globe. Mark Driscoll finished his degree with UMGC while working as a firefighter in Antarctica.
The Antarctica base that I was at is called McMurdo Station. The number one key factor of being down there is to protect the aircraft as they're taking off and landing. If anything sparks off and lights on fire, it's going to spread very quickly. I was there throughout the winter, and it was 24/7 darkness, and they really encourage you to do mental activities to keep yourself sharp. So what I decided was, let's go back and pursue my degree again, something I had been trying to achieve for a very long time. And the communication, the acceptance of the professors, just the all-around support that I had from UMGC makes it possible for people with 88 mile per hour winds and negative 88 degree temperatures with a wind below that could knock out your internet connection to still obtain their degree and graduate with honors. Every single time I do an interview or I tell people I deployed to Antarctica and during that time I completed my degree, they see a warrior that they want on their staff and they are so impressed. It's almost an immediate job offer before the phone call even ends.
UMGC students are able to acquire the skills needed for the workforce of the future and have the chance to experience an array of learning opportunities from workforce-relevant degrees to certificates and credentials.
So our students are learning what's happening in the workplace right now, and they're hearing from folks who are at all different levels of organizations, how to approach these problems, how to solve them, and how those organizations and the industries are preparing for the future.
Our entire approach and academic portfolio is about workforce-relevant degrees.
Employers are looking to stay abreast of the newest and latest evolutions in technology in their business, and so certificate learning is a way for those employers to offer the acquisition of skills that they need in the workplace to their employees.
UMGC continues to build on its legacy of innovation while also celebrating exciting milestones, such as 75 years of teaching service members in Europe.
A legacy founded on serving those who serve us, those who safeguard our civil liberties and our freedom, and of a worthy mission that endures through 75 years of growth, progress, and innovation to inspire hope, to empower dreams, to transform lives.
Thank you, UMGC.
Thank you, UMGC. We love UMGC.
Thank you, Greg, and thank you for a wonderful evening and all of your hospitality for our meeting this year.
Thank you. Just a last word or two, if you don't mind. We live in a complicated world. And as one of my colleagues says, this is as slow as things will get for the rest of our lives. In the months and years ahead, the pace of change and the evolution of learning experiences will challenge much of what we think we know about the places and ways that learning happens, and the importance of being able to assess, validate, and credential learning, and authentic learning and skills acquisition, whether it happens here at UMGC or elsewhere. We believe that particularly for the learner populations that we serve, the disruption that has been documented in the news, music, entertainment, and other industries, and most recently in healthcare and banking, is now coming for post-secondary education. At UMGC, we are excited to help ensure that Maryland's workforce, along with adult learners worldwide, are ready to step into that future. A metaphor that resonates for many at UMGC is one that equates us with Sherpas. For many learners, earning a credential involves a journey that looms like a mountain before them. We can't make the mountain lower, and we can't climb it for them. But we have climbed the mountain ourselves, and we've helped many others climb it as well. And we can promise to walk with them every step of the way. We may guide them with well-worn paths, or we may need to carve out completely new routes. But together, we do believe that we will reach the top. So thank you again, and welcome back to UMGC.
We will now move to the Education Forum. Today, we will receive updates to the intercollegiate athletics landscape. Jennifer Frazier, who serves as Vice President of Division I Governance of the NCAA, will present. As a primary staff liaison to committees, Ms. Frazier helped implement the revised Division I governance structure and worked on policy initiatives, including time management, transfer issues, initial eligibility standards, and transformation. She also has significant experience with the NCAA's governance process, having spent 3 years working in Division II governance group. She began her career at the national office in the Eligibility Center, working in client relations. Ms. Frazier, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you. I thank you for the invitation today to share with you a bit about the NCAA landscape. I'd like to start by saying thank you for your service to the University of Maryland system, to my colleagues who are here representing institutions of higher education. I will embarrass him, but I want to specifically thank Daryl Pines, who serves on our Division I Board of Directors and very ably represents you all in that service. So thank you, sir. There are a number of you who also have given time and energy to serving the NCAA, and I want to thank you for that. Higher education is critically important, as we've just learned. Thank you for those. That video was beautiful. Intercollegiate athletics is a part of that fabric, and in some ways and cases, it can be seen as separate from, it can be seen in contrast to, but the reality is that intercollegiate athletics is a life-changing opportunity for many of our student athletes, and I'm very grateful for the energy and time that you commit to continuing to provide those opportunities. The intercollegiate landscape is shifting, and to many of us, it can feel harsh and stark and fast. But the reality is that the intercollegiate environment is in constant change and has been since the inception of college athletics. What's unique to today's environment, and perhaps for the last 10 years or so, is the change is not of our own doing. It's not of the choices of the individuals that serve from within the NCAA structure. It is external forces, the disruptors to the system that are inviting and challenging the environment. And so we're being dragged into the change, sometimes reluctantly, sometimes in battle, sometimes kicking and screaming. But change and evolution are important, and we've seen the positive outcomes of change and evolution. And we just need to remember that not all change is bad change. Some change, as we saw in the holiday video, brings hope and opportunity, but the change is coming. There was a world, and I'll just offer this quick clarification. When I say NCAA, I mean our members, those who actually govern and make decisions. I will try to differentiate between the NCAA as its member institutions and the national office, which is where I get to work. There used to be a time in which the NCAA could make policy, could study issues, could create outcomes for student athletes and institutions that resulted in positive experiences. Academic reform is a really good example of this, and some of my colleagues were part of those efforts. The reality, though, with something like academic reform, which has increased graduation success rates from 74% to 91% of our student athletes are graduating in Division I. It took 20 years to realize that. It does not happen overnight. And we are not a body of humans that has patience and that will allow ourselves to wait 20 years to see the positive results of something like academic reform. Where trust in the system of the national office and of the NCAA existed before, antitrust litigation has challenged that and really fractured the opportunities to govern nationally. I'm going to speak largely about Division I today, but the changes and the challenges that are happening to Division I are in fact significantly impacting our Division II and III institutions as well. The external forces, state and federal lawmakers, and the courts have involved themselves in the management of intercollegiate athletics at a rate that we didn't think was possible, that previously we could advocate for intercollegiate athletics and the opportunities with rationale and decision-making processes that would win and are no longer winning. And so we find ourselves in this state of change based on external forces. I mentioned before the significant increase in graduation success of our student athletes, which is tremendous. And of course, as we all know, because you're here today, the value that a higher education degree provides someone for their livelihood. But with changes that were the impact of court decisions to transfer eligibility and to name, image, and likeness opportunities, we are likely to see, and there's hypotheses that are being taken, that those graduation rates are going to take a downward trend. Not because the support that's being provided to student athletes has changed. I'm out of my lane here, but what we know is, as higher education experts, when individuals transfer from one campus to the next, not all credits go with them. Their time to graduation is extended. For participation in sport, perhaps with other extracurricular activities, if we complete our eligibility before we complete our degree, the likelihood of completing our degree diminishes. So we're finding ways in which we can actually align the student athletes' eligibility with degree completion while still affording them the freedom to move that has been encouraged by these external forces. There are two other elements that have been central to the collegiate experience that are also being challenged. From the beginning, the number of seasons of competition that a student athlete had aligned with their collegiate enrollment. And just this week, a judge in Tennessee has issued a ruling that it will allow a young man, and it is limited only to him so far, that it will allow a young man to have more collegiate experience than his counterparts by not counting his time at a two-year college. This is largely based on what they are arguing is his ability to earn name, image, and likeness compensation. So what is it that we're going to say in the future? Each institution can determine how long they would like for a student athlete to compete at their campus. Will there be a national regulation that says this collegiate experience aligns with your collegiate enrollment and we're going to adhere to that? These are the questions that are going to face the association. Right now, that's a Division I question, but in reality, it's just a matter of time before Divisions II and III are embarking on that same discussion. The second is student athletes designated as employees. I want to turn here my attention to say thank you to each and every one of you who have actively engaged your state and federal representatives in the discussion around what it means and what it would mean to a campus for your student athletes to be designated as employees. It would be, and this is not hyperbole, catastrophic to some of our institutions if each of their student athletes was designated as an employee. The regional director's decision in the Dartmouth men's basketball case isn't about and wouldn't just encompass what Division I men's basketball student athletes at Dartmouth receive. The language that the regional director used would encompass Divisions II and III and their student athletes. So it isn't to say that student athletes and their experience is different. It is. We've created this thing in the United States of America that makes collegiate sports epic. We should celebrate that. But I think what we're now asking our federal representatives is not to say that student athletes are employees in the way in which I'm an employee, or you're an employee, or a student worker on campus is an employee, but to acknowledge and define something special about the student athlete experience that may not be universal to all student athlete experiences, but that can then be narrowly defined to solving the issue that some have identified. it isn't all doomsday. There is really good news too. The work that the NCAA and the membership have done in answering the critics and changing the narratives is real and it's true. In Division One, the Division One Board of Directors, based on the encouragement and information from the broader Division One membership, adopted something called core guarantees, and it was answering a critic. Many Division One institutions were already doing these things about providing healthy and safe environments, protecting scholarships, ensuring academic support and availability of mental health resources. But by adopting legislation and making it an expectation of what it means to be a Division I member, we're answering a critic. We can point to it and say, look at what our institutions are doing. All of the association, all three divisions, also adopted a model that creates post-eligibility insurance. That costed money. That means that was money dedicated to that program that would have otherwise been returned to conferences and institutions. The post-eligibility insurance program also answers a criticism, and it says if a student athlete has an injury or illness while they're in college, this program for years after they complete their eligibility or disassociate with an institution is a backstop for them to ensure their continued healing. The national office is in a continual state of finding ways to save money and to reallocate those resources. There is a national procurement program that's being studied to scale the leverage and size of institutions. Just think about the amount of athletic training tape that is purchased every year at our 1,100 institutions to support their student athletes. The goal is to leverage that and try to procure that at a cost-effective way for our institutions. The amount of revenue that's generated to the association, which a super-duper majority of that is returned back to its institutions, is generated through media agreements. And last year, there was a renegotiation with our media partner, ESPN, and that was because of the scope and the magnitude to enhance those championships. It isn't just a Division I enhancement. In fact, Division II and III will have opportunities on ESPN platforms that was not there previously. In addition, Charlie Baker, who's the president of the NCAA, former governor of Massachusetts, one of the things he identified early in his tenure is that the NCAA lacks an ability to communicate with fans that are interested in sports in regions of the country. And so he initiated what's called the fan database, colloquially, fan database. And ultimately, it's in building at the moment, but in its final form, what we hope that it results in is that the ability for communication to go to fans in certain, you're a fan of field hockey and you live in Massachusetts, well, by golly, there's a Division III championship that's happening. Go there, enhance the experience of those student athletes that are participating. I know that we spoke earlier before the meeting began about a hearing that occurred this week in the Senate, in the judiciary hearing. It was intended to be focused on sports betting. It took some turns and twists throughout, but it was intended to focus on sports betting. The NCAA is very well aware of the pressures that student athletes are experiencing. And what we know is through the studies that have been conducted, 1 in 10 college students, not college athletes, college students have a gambling addiction. 1 in 3 college student athletes have had harassment because of sports betting. The NCAA has a number of programs through its Draw the Line campaign. There was a report that was issued this fall about an anti-harassment study that was conducted because if you go and you look at this report, it was based on just publicly available information on student athletes' social media platforms. It is horrific, particularly the experience that women are having and women of color. It is sickening the types of language that is used. Now, from a sports policy-making approach, I'm not sure there's a lot we can do, but again, we have leverage, and so we're working with Congress to think about ways in which we can protect the experiences of our student athletes. Banning prop betting on college sports. That is the very specific and narrow ask at this point in time. There are also online and free educational systems that are available to people through EPIC, EPIC, all caps, and they're a company that goes around and speaks directly to athletes, firsthand experience of individuals that have had sports betting addictions that used to be athletes. So there are things that the NCAA is doing associated with sports betting and creating a healthy and safe environment for student athletes. Madam Chair, I'm going to stop. You can take me, as I mentioned, any direction that you'd like to go. I know that there's a goal to be expeditious with our agenda. I want to support that. But if there are any questions or comments or anything that I can leave here with today or respond to, I'm glad to do that now.
Okay, we'll open it up to questions. Yes, Jeff?
Can't pass up the opportunity.
I'm glad you did it.
Thank you very much for the presentation and for all your comments. I'm just curious, from a more general standpoint, where the NCAA is on federal preemption to deal with a handful of the issues that you identified.
Yeah, thank you for asking that question and giving me the opportunity to share that. The ask of Congress has not changed over the years. And because of the work that you all have done, you've seen movement on the employment status conversation. It used to be divided on political lines, employee, labor, union, and not. And now there's a reality that even Democrats are agreeing that the employment classification may not be exactly the right place to be. The other two elements that are a narrow safe harbor, and I mentioned earlier the court activity here, and this is becoming more present. The narrow safe harbor is not saying that the NCAA or Division I only should have a full and complete antitrust exemption. That is not the ask. But as a governing organization, the ask is, can there be a narrow application of a safe harbor to allow the association to govern? Each time Division I has made an attempt or actually changed a rule, we are subject to litigation for the past of that rule. The settlement provides a framework for the third ask, which is preemption of state law, primarily around NIL, but other activities, but a federal law that would preempt the patchwork of state laws. The settlement that's been proposed and preliminary approved provides a framework for that, that would achieve that. So those are the three asks. Employment status, preempt state law, narrow safe harbor.
Regent McMillan?
Jen, great to have you here, and thank you for all your leadership over the years. I was thinking back over the years about how college sports has evolved and how unique it is in America, where big-time college sports coexists with academia. Doesn't happen anywhere else in the world. It's interesting you noted the sports betting hearing this week in the Senate Judiciary Committee, because I think this word college sports could really meet its Waterloo, because I believe, and most experts also agree with this, there's 100% probability that there are going to be major scandals, sports betting scandals, across college campuses today, and you alluded to some of those statistics. What can a university, what can a system do to protect itself against these looming problems? And the fact is that, the rising commercialism of college sports and all the things about academics being pushed to the side, but then you have this major risk factor, sports betting. What can we do as a system to protect ourselves for that possibility?
Tom, thank you, and thank you for your years of service to intercollegiate athletics. It's a really good question, and I think my answer will be insufficient because I'm not the expert here. But what I think is about the education, the number of student athletes who report confidentiality engaging in betting activity was surprising. And I think as a system and as educators, one of the things that you all might consider doing is providing environments that make it safe for a student athlete to come forward and say, I'm in trouble. I need help. I've gotten myself in deeper. There's a shame and a stigma associated with that, not dissimilar from mental health. And thinking like, well, one more bet will get me out of it. That's an extreme case, but even you start to dabble. Education, and probably not by somebody in my age bracket, but I mentioned EPIC, that can be, a resource, is something that can meet young people where they are. And then I think just educating and being realistic. So it used to be, back in my day, maybe back in your day, that you could be in your dining hall or you could be in your dormitory and you could just be chit-chatting with no big deal about team health and well-being and those types of things. And now all of a sudden, in the dining line, when you're going through and creating your food tray, somebody says, how's Tom's ankle? That's not an altruistic question anymore. That's not a question of curiosity. That's a question to inform a planned wager, right? How is a young person supposed to be able to discern that? So, Tom, those are the things I would say. Education from people who can speak directly to student athletes, creating a safe environment, and then the tools and mechanisms. I mean, this is largely done on phones, right? And so the tools and mechanisms to figure out how to block people on social media and protect yourself in those settings. And then, the dangers associated with getting in deep in the sports betting activities.
Regent Marani.
Thank you. I noticed that many of the arguments in support of designating student athletes as employees, the idea that students can have distinct roles as learners and as workers, closely resemble many of the arguments we've heard in Maryland, both in the USM and in our state legislature, related to arguments in favor of graduate student collective bargaining. And so I'm curious if you see those issues as interrelated, or if the movement in one area might affect the other.
I'm going to thank you for that. I'm going to start with your second question, and then I'll go back to the first. And yes, I mean, I think that sports can mirror other things that happen. So I think, yes, there could one follow the other. I'm not going to, in this case, answer on behalf of the NCAA or being an employee of or representative of the NCAA, but my own personal is, this is why special status is so important. Because it isn't as simple as saying the student athletes at Towson are the same as the student athletes at Maryland College Park. They're not all having the exact same experience, but the designation of employee is not nuanced. And so there has to be a different conversation about the experiences that student athletes are having and whether a single definition has to apply to everyone. That's the type of conversation that I hope that we can have.
Regent Breslin.
Jennifer, thank you for your presentation. I'm going to follow up on Regent McMillan's question kind of specifically, and that is, I think in your presentation you mentioned that 1 in 3 student athletes have been approached or harassed, whatever term you want to make, which is a striking statistic. And then you also mentioned that one of the initiatives going on is to ban prop betting on that. And I think obviously when bettors can bet on an individual's performance, it greatly enhances the risk of scandal erupting in terms of any sport. So my question would be, other than the gambling lobby, who would be against banning prop bets on college athletes?
That's a tremendous question. My guess is some in the general public who actually enjoy wagering on college sports. I mean, it is its own activity, right? So when you go to a game and look around at the people that are sitting near you, they likely have their phones out. Some of them are looking at box scores and live stats and some of those types of things, and some of them are actively on the sports betting apps, right? It's a way to engage in the competition that's in front of you, right? So perhaps they might be another population that's opposed to it.
It would seem to me that's that would be one of the most important things to get banned if we want to protect both the student athletes and our institutions.
Regent Gordine and then Regent Leggett.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Really appreciate everything you said. Clearly, it's been thought-provoking to all of us. I want to go back to a statistic you shared at the beginning of your presentation, where we were talking about students who transfer, and that not all of their credits are transferable, and the projected impact in reducing time to graduation. I worry about a few things and love your comments on any or all of these. What is the financial impact to the student and to the student's family of that? What is the impact to their future employability? While I'm sure many of our student athletes have aspirations of professional sports, very few of them will go on to do so. And so what happens to the rest of them?
Thank you for those questions. I don't have data to support my answer, but I'm glad to provide personal remarks. You heard that, our graduation success rate is at 91%. And so that captures a period of time where student athletes can complete their degree requirements. What I know is the flip side, which is there was a Gallup study that was done quite a while ago, but it's still relevant, that shows that individuals who have a higher education degree earn more than $1 million in their lifetime versus those that do not. And so the financial impact, though, to complete the degree is going to vary based on the experience that the student athlete has. Many of our institutions, now in Division I, if you're a scholarship student athlete, you're guaranteed degree completion in a 10-year period. If you are on scholarship in a 10-year period, you're going to get your degree completion covered by the institution. That's what I mean about answering our critics, right? There is scholarship protection, degree completion programs. In Division II, it's partial scholarship models, but it's institutional choice. And then, of course, Division III has an entirely different financial aid model to supporting those student athletes. So the financial impact to complete degree is institutional choice, but Division I does have degree completion programs. Employability, again, this is hypothetical, but employers love hiring student athletes. And it also sounds like employers love hiring firemen from Antarctica. But they understand this is the value of sport that's lost, right? You're resilient, you understand teamwork, you understand how to manage your time. Those are the things that participation in extracurricular activities provides to you.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yes, Regent Wood.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for your presentation on this really highly relevant topic. My question is, with regard to the issues that you have discussed and brought to our attention, is that across all sports, women and men, or is it more isolated or concentrated with particular sports?
There are so many issues. So let me try to pick a couple. The challenges that we see in the court system related to the proposed settlement, that's a consolidation of 3 cases. That is largely focused on football and men's and women's basketball. But it will impact all collegiate athletics in Division I, all of them, regardless of gender or sport. Changes to transfer eligibility that came through the court system ultimately adopted in Division I, but those changes were the result of a men's football student athlete and a men's basketball student athlete. So if I could ask for a little bit of grace in my language choice here, we've got high-profile sports, football, men's and women's basketball. Depending on the region of the country, they might be different sports. In the Southeast, baseball and softball would fall into that mix. Those high-profile sports where the risk-reward calculation is different than in some of the other sports is largely where the disruptions come into play.
Yes, Regent Hassan?
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's great.
I know that one of the questions came up, who else are the against the supporter of this issue? Isn't that the state and the federal legislatures are not going against that because it's a revenue, tax revenue for them? I mean, it's a benefit they're getting, which perhaps if you cancel or terminate it, you will have issue with the deficits.
Well, you would have to ask them that question, but I think that's a very good hypothesis, and I think Mr. Breslin mentioned that as well with the companies that are involved and the benefits that are received at the state level. And it's important here to note that that's why the request is so narrow. It isn't to say that sports betting activity should be completely banned. The court has already ruled on that. Capital T, capital C there at the court has already ruled on that. That's why it's just carving out this very narrow piece about the protection of the student athletes who are within our campus populations during their eligibility period.
Well, Jen, thank you for coming in and sharing your thoughts and being so gracious and taking so many questions this morning. We appreciate the input, and we also appreciate the difficulty of what the NCA is trying to do.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate you.
Madam Chair, I just had one last comment, which
I'll take all those compliments again when Tom's done.
You know, I think we have to put this in perspective, and that's what we often don't do. We live here in America. We think big-time sports is just part of our culture, but it's not that way in Europe. I mean, you go to Oxford, the only big sports betting event is the crew race in London once a year. This is uniquely American, and it's a uniquely American problem that we are going to have to face. And there's nothing that we can do about it. You can ban prop bets, it will go underground. This is a problem due to the vast commercialization of college sports on our campuses. And sports betting is the problem, and it's going to continue to grow. And so I continue to say to this system and to every president, be vigilant, because this is a day that's coming, and it will not be a pretty day for higher education in America. But again, thank you for your leadership.
My pleasure. Thank you all very much. I hope the rest of your meeting goes well. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks, Jen. We'll now have the Chancellor's report.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I know that for many, this meeting is the last item between work and winter break. And so my holiday gift to all of you is a comparatively brief board report. Please note that I said comparatively. Let me begin with our host today, UMGC, where there's much to celebrate. Greg, I need to say to you on behalf of all of us that we take such great pride in everything that you and your colleagues do. It just feels good. UMGC has won a significant grant from the Gates Foundation to model strategies for reaching underserved students, and another from the U.S. Labor Department to expand apprenticeship pathways to careers in technology. The university has launched a more flexible MBA and, keeping with its roots, a program granting college credit, as we saw, for military service experience. UMGC students just took first, second, and fourth place in a regionally popular cyber competition, almost a clean sweep. Congratulations on all of this. Bowie State has announced a new tuition-free program to help 75 Maryland teachers earn national board certification, focusing this effort on Black male teachers. President Breaux, you know how important this initiative is to implementing Maryland's K-12 blueprint, and we thank you for your leadership in building our teacher constituency. College Park is celebrating the third largest gift in Maryland athletics history, $18 million gift from alumnus Stephen Shanwald, of which $10 million will go to the athletics department, $8 million will endow the Smith School's sports management program and fund student scholarships. So congratulations to President Pines. UMB has received more than $2 million in city and state funds to support 35,000 square feet of flexible lab space in its biopark. This project is at 4 MLK, this wonderful new building as you enter Baltimore on Martin Luther King Drive. It's a new tower that will shortly open, and the space I mentioned is going to help Maryland researchers move their ideas to the marketplace and fortify the state's competitiveness in life sciences innovation. And I want to congratulate President Gerald for that accomplishment. And let me mention those last two schools again: the University of Maryland, College Park, and UMB. On the latest National Science Foundation survey of research productivity, the combined R&D expenditures of College Park and UMB linked in the survey as a single research enterprise in keeping with the strategic partnership. That number reached $1.4 billion. And what does that mean? That's 18th among all U.S. universities, public and private, 11th among public. More importantly, it represents a lot of world-changing discovery. So congratulations, congratulations. Coppin State has joined Baltimore City's Live Near Your Work program, encouraging employee home ownership in nearby neighborhoods. These are grants to employees which start at $50,000 to help cover down payments and closing costs. I know this kind of program well from my time at UMB. It's a game changer. It transforms neighborhoods. And it's so important to our employees to get that assist. So great congratulations to Coppin State. Towson. Towson University is one of only 22 U.S. universities to be designated a national center of academic excellence in cyber operations by the NSA. The university has also won the NSA designation for its programs advancing cyber defense education. Congratulations, President Ginsburg. UBalt has inked a new partnership with Funding Innovation Studio to improve access to capital for underrepresented entrepreneurs, founders of color, and women. Part of the famed Lab Central ecosystem, this studio dismantles systemic barriers in fundraising and capital deployment. So congratulations to President Schmoke. UMES is also celebrating a new partnership. The university is the latest partner in United Airlines' Aviate program, which helps student pilots earn advanced certifications, accrue flight hours, and land jobs with the airline. Important, and thank you, President Anderson. I want to cite our HBCUs together for a moment. So listen to this. The college resource site, Online U, studied the ROI, the return on investment, among the country's historically black institutions, with an examination of actual college costs and graduate salaries over time. This stuff is what the public needs to hear. So for overall ROI, Bowie came in second nationwide and Coppin sixth. For first-year salaries, Coppin was second, Bowie seventh. Among small HBUs with the best alumni salaries, Coppin took second and UMES seventh. I would say there's a lot to be proud of here. I'd like to say so there to a lot of people, and I thank our HBCU leaders. Salisbury University held its biannual shore hatchery competition, inviting entrepreneurs to vie for $100,000 in prize money. The top award went to Marin's Med for its specialized prosthetic device that improves the functionality of amputees. In its 11-year history, the hatchery's award winners together have recorded profits of $35 million a year and have created, here we go again to the public, 1,200 local jobs. Thank you, President LaPree. Frostburg University is once again honored by the All-In Campus Democracy Challenge. Its Most Engaged Campus designation recognizes its success in student voting rates. Frostburg's work in civic engagement obviously is terribly important, and thank you, Mr. DeLee, and please pass on my congrats. At UMBC, an interdisciplinary team has won a $3.5 million NIH grant to explore alternatives to health interventions in an effort to curb over-reliance on clinical medicine. It partners with a major Medicaid health plan, and the team will build a machine learning model to identify patients that have social stressors, the stuff we call the social determinants of health, the things people like me and Dr. Gordine can't easily address, things like food insecurity or unstable housing. And it will determine how best to connect them with long-term social supports. Great work, President Shears-Ashby. UMCES is leading a bilateral collaboration with China aimed at cutting nitrous oxide emissions. A delegation of UMCES researchers met with their Chinese counterparts at Zhejiang University to begin drafting the Hangzhou Agreement, which will accelerate progress on U.S. State Department commitments regarding greenhouse gas reductions. Again, terribly important work, President Morales-Wilhelm. Turning to our regional centers for a moment, the USM at Southern Maryland hosted 150 Maryland Corps members, this program that's so important to our governor, contributing a year of paid service to the state. The governor's Service and Civic Innovation Program nurtures personal and professional growth, while at the same time targeting talent to areas of greatest need. It's a terrific idea, And bringing young people to Southern Maryland is also a terrific idea. They might stay, they might do a world of good there. So Director Abel, thank you so much. And the USM at Hagerstown, which cares so much about generating scholarship money, held its annual Feast and Frolic fundraiser, which netted $116,000 for student scholarships. It's the first time they've gone over 100,000. Nice work, Director Jacob Ashby. Last week, the U.S. Treasury Department named USG a Center of Excellence for its work in driving local entrepreneurship. That is one of only 5 organizations nationally in the agency's first ever cohort. So this designation is going to unlock resources that will help USG support small companies right in this area looking to do business with Treasury. And I was honored to join you, Dr. Kadimi, and thank you. Now, before I close, I want to acknowledge our public speaker today, Dr. Justin Dunmeyer of Frostburg State, who went to some effort to come out here today and speak. I am fortunate to have met with the leadership of Frostburg's Faculty Senate several times since last summer, when the university announced its plan to eliminate a $7.7 million structural deficit. And I've been grateful for the candor and counsel of Professor Dunmeyer and his colleagues. As you're aware, part of the plan to restore Frostburg's financial stability involves faculty retrenchment. It's not an action any of our universities take lightly. It's not an action that the system takes lightly, but it's necessary, together with many other cost-cutting measures now in progress. And I want to thank Frostburg's faculty for its participation on the team responsible for shaping this budget plan. And I thank them for the leadership on the committee charged with identifying faculty members for retrenchment. As difficult as these decisions are and were, they were made by the people with the greatest stake in them. To my view, this is shared governance in action. It follows the process of the university. And it is during times of challenge that university policies must be followed faithfully and faultlessly. That's why they're there, and they were. It's during crises that communication with the university community, yes, must be two-way and frequent. And to my view, it's been all of these things. Still, I understand that fidelity to the process doesn't ease the pain, of course it doesn't, of those affected by retrenchment, and I'm sorry. I need you all to know that the system has offered financial relief to Frostburg to minimize as much as possible the impact of cuts on the university's people during these times. I personally meet monthly with Frostburg's leaders, together with my colleagues in the system, to monitor progress on budget objectives and outcomes. And this board has been supportive of the university since being briefed last July on the plan to restore fiscal health. And that is the plan, to restore fiscal health. let's face it, this is a shrinking higher ed landscape, financially and nationally. 24 U.S. colleges closed this year alone, and a projected 80 more will close by 2029. I want to be exceedingly clear to everybody in this room and beyond. The system is supporting Frostburg State University expressly so that the university can regain full strength to serve its students, its region, and this state. Frostburg is a model among anchor institutions. We all know that. It contributes enormously to the economy and the vitality of Western Maryland. I've had that conversation with the governor. We agree. That indispensable role, that very real value, is in fact what we're protecting, because Frostburg State is too important to too many people to do anything else. Regents, presidents, everyone in the room, as we look ahead to 2025, I thank all of you for uncompromising dedication to the students and the state we're so proud to serve. Madam Chair, this concludes my report.
Thank you, Chancellor. Any questions? Tom?
Madam Chair, first of all, Chancellor, thank you for your very important update. I just wanted to offer a historical note on the gift you mentioned, the $18 million gift by Steve Schoenwald.
You might say who he is,
Yeah,
if that's
so-
appropriate, Darrell.
Well, he was there at Maryland approximately when I was there, but he, 1977, he walked into a gentleman's office by the name of Russ Potts, and Russ was a legend, the first sports marketing executive ever in college sports. Russ gave Steve an unpaid internship, and Steve went on to great things with the Chicago White Sox, the Chicago Bulls, and that $18 million gift, of which $10 million goes to the athletic department, I think it's the third largest athletic gift, is being co-named with Russ, and that's why I wanted to bring it up. Sometimes we forget these historical significance and why this happened. It happened because of Russ Potts, and I'm just very thankful for his gift, and just wanted to bring that to attention. Thank you.
Thank you for expanding. Anything else?
Yes. Regent Wood?
I would just like to thank Tom for telling me something I did not know. Russ Potts was a fraternity brother of mine at College Park. He was an incredible, boundless energy guy, and to hear that his name is going to be on that is very important to me personally and the system.
Any other questions or comments for the Chancellor? Seeing none, thank you, Chancellor. We'll now have the Council of University System Faculty report from Dr. Haberback.
Good morning.
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 I just told him that he was leaving during the best part of the meeting, so there he goes. We sat next to each other last night. Good morning, Chair Gooden, members of the Board of Regents, Chancellor Perman, university presidents. Thank you for having me this morning. Thank you for hosting us last night. Everything was delicious. The music was fabulous, as well as this morning. The CUSIF, I'm going to share the CUSIF general report. As you know, I like to keep my comments brief, and I will continue with that today. We had our general faculty meet, or our general board meeting on December 10th. Senior Vice Chancellor Rinn came and answered questions regarding Frostburg State. A discussion was held about the importance of working on a USM faculty bullying policy, and Kelsey Beckett, the Chief of Staff and Director of Operations, shared the history of the work that has been done on this previously. There is a policy for staff, but not one for faculty, and we're talking specifically about faculty on faculty bullying. So we're going to try to work on that this year, but we wanted to go back to the history. During this meeting, CUSIF passed 3 resolutions regarding collective bargaining rights for graduate students, collective bargaining rights for faculty, and Frostburg State University. All of those resolutions you will find in my report. The Executive Committee also met on December 4th, and at both meetings, Heather Haverback, Allison Wren, and Kelsey Beckett shared updates and reports with the committee, and the Executive Committee was also joined by the committee chairs who highlighted the work that they're doing. Some highlights of what is going on within our committees are the awards committee members noted the excellence of the applications this year that they reviewed and will be or have already sent to the Board of Regents. The Kerwin Center approached the Education Policy Committee and asked that we co-sponsor another faculty showcase on AI, and this would be more focused on AI for faculty. Last year it was really focused on teaching, and this year it would be more faculty. Given the Chancellor's charge to CUSIF last month asking us to help socialize USM faculty on ways to use AI in their daily work as a step towards getting in their classroom instruction, we've accepted the challenge and have successfully brought Maryland Online and Montgomery College on board again for additional support. September 2025 is the target date for this event. I cut out a lot of my report, so please excuse me as there's a whole page you don't have to hear. The Academic Concerns Committee is working on issues identified by the members that take place across the USM, and again, they are focused on their 3 groups within safety concerns, affirmative action and diversity, and support personnel. The Legislative Affairs Committee reiterates their support for collective bargaining for both faculty and graduate students in the form of resharing and urging the general body to reconfirm such support, which they have done. The Legislative Affairs Committee also expresses their deep concern, as per the resolution, about the retrenchment situation at Frostburg State and hope that the Board of Regents will consider what we have recommended. The Research Committee is working on research portals, HighFlex to support collaborative research across the USM, and the appropriate and effective use of AI in research. And finally, the Rules and Membership Committee is working on running an election for the C7 task force. I wish you all a happy new year. I look forward to seeing you next year. I know that we have all been busy, and I hope that everybody gets to relax and have a couple of laughs with their family, friends, and loved ones. Madam Chair, that concludes my report.
Well, thank you. And are there any questions for Dr. Haverback? Seeing none, thank you and happy holidays to you. Our next is the Council of University Systems staff and Dr. Patricia will present.
Good morning, everyone. Chair Gooden, Chancellor Perman, Regents, Presidents, hello. To President Fowler and UMGC and your staff and faculty, thank you for hosting us today and last night. It's always incredible to hear about the global reach and impact of UMGC, and it's something that I don't know that we talk about enough, so thank you so much. Heather always does a really good job about telling you what each of her committees are doing. I take a broader approach, as you may have noticed, so that will continue today. But when I stood before you in 2022, my first year as chair, I remarked that we were limping toward the close of the year, looking forward to a break. This is our first full year back from COVID, marked by enrollment fears, outbreaks of illness, and the uncertainty of the future. Last year, I shared much the same sentiment as we navigated growing campus protests and unrest. I hate to say I stand before you and wonder at how this is the 3rd year in a row that feels like we are limping across the finish line. The current political climate creates uncertainty in our operations, and the future of our enrollment program and institutions generally has staff scrambling, but scrambling without quite knowing the game we are playing. We also continue to see significant issues with student mental health, rising global instability and conflict, and though comparatively less dire, but still very impactful, significant infrastructure changes on many of our campuses in the past year. As I was preparing for my talk today, I kept trying to decipher why fatigue has been the resounding message I receive from staff each year. While I came to some conclusions, I realized that I could go into detail about what I think contributes to our current state. the never-ending email inbox, the overpacked calendars, but I suspect many of you are experiencing this feeling too. To quote a February 2024 article in Time, the confluence of unsustainable lifestyles, stress out of our control, and financial insecurity creates a very tired group of people. I'll take this time to thank so many of our presidents for giving us an extra holiday break this winter break so that we can recover and return refreshed. So I don't mention the stress to say that we haven't had great progress in the past few years. We've been very fortunate to receive over 25% in pay increases since fiscal year 2020. You, the Regents, with the advocacy of the USM, have passed policies that increase leave and support for staff, and I continue to have hope that we will see improvements in the efforts around shared governance on our campuses. I thank the Regents, the USM leadership, and the presidents for their support of these efforts. While these advancements have been significant, and it almost seems we have no right to feel the fatigue and stress we do, the daily experiences and challenges of our staff and faculty remain. I share this all with you today, not because I expect you to fix it, but because I think it's worth keeping in mind where we have been and where we are when determining how we want to proceed, given the issues we are facing on financial, political, and policy fronts. I would be remiss if I didn't advocate for the continued involvement of staff, faculty, and students in decisions on managing these impending challenges, as Chancellor Perman just noted is happening at Frostburg. As I've often mentioned, staff play a vital role in achieving the goals of the USM, whether that's through housing programs, IT infrastructure, counseling and mental health support, academic and career advising, student-oriented programs, activities, and so much more. We are partners in balancing the issues we face while still achieving the mission of the USM to educate and serve the people of Maryland. I believe that through thoughtful leadership and engagement with shared governance, we can proceed with this as one, with transparency, honesty, and cooperation. So I've talked long enough in a meeting that Chair Gooden hoped would be quick. So one last item I'll highlight from my report today is that CUS is looking forward to an in-person meeting at UMB in January, where we will spend a significant portion of our time together planning for Advocacy Day, which will happen on February 19th. As I mentioned in the November meeting, this will be a critical time for us to speak with a unified voice about the importance of our legislators making USM funding a priority. Thank you so much for your time today, and I wish you all a safe, restorative, and enjoyable holiday season, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Are there any questions for Dr. Patricia? Seeing none, thank you and happy holidays to you. Now we have the Council of University System Presidents presented by Dr. Breaux.
Thank you and good morning and happy holidays, Chair Gooden, Chancellor Perman, Regents, my colleagues, and everyone gathered here today. I will be brief. Let me also thank and acknowledge President Fowler and the entire campus of UMGC for your hospitality. It's great to be back here on the campus. CUS met last on December 9th for the last meeting of the calendar year. And Associate Vice Chancellors Candace Carrico and Chad Muntz gave an overview of the JCR Student Cohort Report. This discussion presented a dynamic data tool that provides institutional level data on first-time in-state students enrolled within USM. Senior Vice Chancellor Wren led a discussion related to international students, faculty, and staff, noting that some of the universities in the system and around the country are advising students on visas to return to the U.S. ahead of January 20th out of concerns. Finally, the council met with a panel of government affairs professionals to discuss priorities of the new administration and implications for higher education. And that is pretty much my report. And so on behalf of CUS, let me again say happy holidays to everyone. Congratulations to my colleagues on wrapping up the semester. I know many had commencements, some as recent as yesterday, and that includes Bowie State University. I'd like to acknowledge Regent Hassan, who joined us on the campus of BSU, and to all the regents that came out to the campuses. Congratulations to all for the graduates that went across the stage just recently. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Breaux. Any questions for Dr. Breaux? And there was a nice segment on the news yesterday on the Bowie graduation, so congratulations.
Thank you.
Happy holidays. And now our report on the University System Maryland Student Council, Ms. Gambier.
Good morning, Chair Gooden, Chancellor Perman, the Board of Regents, and University Presidents. And thank you so much, President Fowler, for a wonderful dinner and meeting. We had our December general meeting earlier this month, and I want to thank President Barrow and Bowie State for welcoming us. We interviewed 6 student regent candidates and have forwarded 3 candidates on to Chancellor Perman for your consideration. And the Director for Government Relations in that meeting also presented their report relating to the upcoming legislative session and Advocacy Day in February. They shared some information on advocating for the USM budget and other key legislation. They also sent out a survey to students afterwards to gather student legislative priorities, and they will be in touch shortly to collect the stance on the council on various bills in preparation for Advocacy Day. Chancellor Perman, we would also like to thank you for meeting with graduate student representatives last week. And while I wasn't able to be a part of that meeting, I learned in a brief conversation with Denise that students will be back in touch to share a proposal for bolstering the in-confer. And I will also be in touch with the student representatives and leadership on that as well. And finally, the Director of Communications and I have been working not only on creating some materials to advertise the upcoming Board of Regents Scholarship Program that we hope to get running, but also on creating a monthly newsletter system that compiles information, updates, and key events from across different campuses. Because I think one of the things that we realized as a student council was that while we come together for these monthly meetings, it's very difficult to hear about key events that are happening across campuses when they're happening at different times and when we have a set agenda for a meeting. So I'm very grateful to our Director of Communications who actually brought that idea forward, and we'll be working over winter break on that, and hopefully we'll have something for next semester to get started on. At the previous meeting, we also briefly discussed at the very end, including resources or guidance to support international students as they travel for the holidays in light of possible immigration changes in 2025. And Madam Chair, this concludes my report. Thank you so much and happy holidays.
So are there any questions for Ms. Gambier? Seeing none, thank you for your report and happy holidays. The next order of business is the consent agenda. Decisions regarding which items to include on the consent agenda were made by me and the committee chairs. However, any regent may request that an item be removed from the consent agenda for separate review and discussion. Before I move approval of the consent agenda, I ask if there are any items that any region would like removed from the consent agenda for separate review and discussion. Yes.
One of the things we talked about in the Finance Committee about that procurement of $5 million and less approved by the Chancellor. And the discussion was that we'll take it offline, but we have not done that.
Okay.
And anytime you suggest take it offline, it never happens. So the 3 items happened since I joined the board. And I just want to bring that to attention that we need to sort of, when we suggest that, we should take it seriously and get it sort of addressed.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Ellen, can you take an action to schedule with Regent Hassan the for detailed discussion on $5 million procurements? It's now an official action.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I move approval of all the items on the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the next order of business, which is the committee reports. First up is an update on research across the system from the Research and Economic Development Committee. Regent Wood, please take the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone, and happy holidays. I am delighted to introduce this topic today. As you may know, what is now the Committee on Research and Economic Development expanded its charge to include emphasis on research. Each committee meeting, we share research highlights across the system. Today, Vice Chancellor Masucci, the system's inaugural Vice Chancellor for Research and Economic Development, will report on research excellence across the system. Additionally, she will provide an exciting update on the National Science Foundation higher education research development expenditures and what drives this accounting. And I'd like to invite you in particular at the end of her presentation to watch for the Research and Economic Development Committee initiatives that we are working on and are in the process of developing. So, Regent Masucci, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Regent Wood. I want to thank all of you for your time today. Certainly want to acknowledge once again President Fowler for hosting us here today and for providing the opportunity to share a little bit about what's going on in the research world across the system. You heard some highlights earlier, but we'll go over some more. So these are some of the things I'm going to talk about today. This is a committee update. And it would be remiss of me not to acknowledge that Regent Leggett was the long-standing chair of this committee that moved us to a more holistic approach to focusing on research and economic development. He's been a staunch champion of the need to support more equitable distribution of venture funds at the USM, something we'll talk about a little bit later on in my presentation. I just want to thank him for his effort, and I hope you will join me in giving him a round of applause for the work that he did over all of these years. I also want to thank my committee members, certainly our new chair, Bill Wood, who's going to be working very enthusiastically on some of the initiatives that we talk about later on today. I'm very grateful for his leadership. As well, the other members of the committee are Regent Newberger, Regent Anderson, Regent Fish, Regent Hassan, Regent Herr, and Regent Parker. And of course, the Chancellor and Chair Gooden are always at all of the meetings, and I'm very grateful for that as well. And I need to also thank my small but very mighty staff. Lindsay, Brian, Julia Chadwick, and Matt Walston Jenkins. They make it all happen. We're small, but we get a lot done. And our approach is to work with institutions on projects that are of value to that institution. That's how we do it with so few people. We emphasize research across the system as a part of our strategic plan. You have the plan in front of you, those of you who are sitting at tables, and these are the research goals. Alignment with federal priorities, a very deep focus on environmental science, which you've heard about now for quite a while from me, a commitment to community research, where many of our universities have especially strong ties to their communities, our focus on collaborative research, and I'll be highlighting some of those activities, our focus on strategic partnerships to drive successes in research, our focus on diversifying sources of funding to deal with some of the uncertainty that I think we're all understanding is a part of the landscape in federal funding at least. And finally, research for the social good and helping to understand what that is. We had a very deep dive on this during our board retreat on strategic planning where we went through some of the metrics and how we're doing on these. I want to make a couple of comments about the way in which research gets designed at our institutions. You may have seen this slide from me before, but I think it bears repeating, that when we talk about research in a university setting, we're talking about multiple things under a big tent. We're talking about basic and applied research. That's where your dollars come in and drive activities of faculty. I think it's really important to understand that research, scholarly, creative, and innovation activities are cornerstones that differentiate universities of higher ed, USM institutions of higher learning. It's what makes universities special and distinct from other forms of education. It supports our students so that they can benefit from the expertise, the immersion in high-quality facilities, opportunities to advance their own educational and workforce goals. And those are foundations in their learning because they connect to the passions of our faculty who are the drivers of excellence in research. But a second tier for research is this discovery and innovation and knowledge transfer, which is an equally important part of what we do in higher education. I often tell different audiences with whom I work that one of the most important things we do in public higher education is that we advance the ability of students who don't come from significant means often to be able to be a part of a research enterprise and learn the skills, gain access to high quality facilities that enable them to pursue an advancement of their ability to work in those fields. And importantly, we are that sort of platform, I think, for success in basic research that is publicly discoverable. For the most part, our universities do not do research that is sequestered either as commercial research or classified research, although we do have classified facilities in the system. Most of the work we do is in the public domain. And I think it's really important to fight for that and champion that. Finally, I want to say this about a research design. Research is designed intentionally. It is not arrived at accidentally. When we celebrate awards, as the Chancellor did earlier in his remarks, and as he does every time he comes before this body to showcase awards, we do so because winning these awards is not like winning the lottery. I know a lot of people think it's sort of like that. I won an award. But actually, it's the result of career-long efforts to gain expertise, arduous work, identifying resources that can support the advancement of that work, tireless efforts to mentor the next generation of students and trainees that are going to go and be a part of a research enterprise more broadly, working on building facilities, disseminating findings, aligning those efforts to the missions at the department level, at the school and college level, center level, institute level, and universities as a whole. And here at the system, really thinking about it in a systemic way. How do we collaborate together? So I just really want to impart that why we celebrate those successes, and we do it so often, is because it's the least we could do for the effort being put in by the people who do that work. So I'm going to walk you through some of our strengths across the system at a very high level. I invite anyone to comment if you would like to do so. We have our university presidents here who are much more in the weeds on these areas of expertise. But at a very high level, if we were to describe what the USM is good at to our colleagues around the country, well, we're known for biomedical health and health data research. We're known for engineering, including materials, robotics, autonomous systems, and advanced manufacturing. And in both of these areas, we do several $100 million of research a year. So when I say it's a strength, I don't mean it's sort of topically a strength. I mean we have deep depths, multiple institutions across multiple awards over really decades. We're known for cybersecurity, systems, infrastructure, and artificial intelligence. You've heard a lot about that in these meetings over the past 2 years that I've been here. We're known for environmental and climate science. In fact, we have an environmental science graduate university as a standalone university in the system. I don't know of any other university system that has something like that. We're known for aerospace research. We launch satellites into space. We have instrumentation that is going to be on the moon. I mean, these are incredible accomplishments that require massive investments in people, in facilities, and in training. And finally, we're really well known for social science and policy research too. I mean, we can look at institutions like UVault where that's actually a main focus of the research enterprise. It's applied, it's community connected, it's relevant to the problems that we face right here in our region. We have many large-scale initiatives that you have heard about here in this body, but I'm gonna rewind the tape to remind you of where we've been as we've talked about our strengths. At our retreat, we heard from the University of Maryland's brand new artificial intelligence interdisciplinary institute, timely because of the focus that everyone has on the need to better understand artificial intelligence and to grapple with what those tools would bring to the table. We've heard about the Institute for Health Computing, again, most recently at our retreat, but we actually just had a grand opening of the new facility. Is the home to this amazing collaboration between the University of Maryland College Park, the University of Maryland Baltimore, the University of Maryland Medical System, Montgomery County itself, and we think, great things are going to come out of that work. We have heard about ARLIS. You may recall that Bill Regley, when he was the director, presented at this board and talked about the fantastic work going on, but what you may not know, because you may not have heard it, but if you haven't, I'm going to tell you, they've gotten a $500 million re-up on their contract, so that's a cap on the work that they can do. I'm just going to say it again, $500 million. That's $500 million of research in working in this whole domain of protecting our cyber assets, protecting our cyber communications. And I would point out that a very big driver of this are students who work at ARLIS, who get their credentials to work in classified fields, and they come out of working at ARLIS and other facilities across the system, by the way, ready to work in DoD-related fields. That's an incredible pipeline that's being driven by ARLIS. But I'm also going to say that many of the people who work at ARLIS are social scientists. So we think about the engineering strengths that we have, the cyber strengths that we have, but we also have to understand how people power all of that and how people think about these technologies, and that's what they specialize in. We've also heard about the Chesapeake Global Collaboratory, which is an UMCES initiative, which is really trying to position UMCES at the forefront of ecosystem modeling. We've all heard about climate system modeling. But when you start to think about ecosystem modeling and making a dent in that, what does it require? It requires data, lots of analytical tools, a dedicated center where the community of scholars who work in that area can come together. They had their ground opening, or I should say their groundbreaking for their new facility at Horn Point Lab earlier this year. And finally, we heard about at our retreat a startup at the Armory, Towson, which has an annual showcase that's kind of become a real go-to showcase in the region for startups and new companies. And I mean, it attracts people from the DC area, it attracts people from national academies. I mean, you wouldn't expect that necessarily because it is very locally specific in terms of what it does, and yet that's who the community that they're bringing together is. There is a saying that we have in research, and my colleagues who are researchers may laugh at me when I say this, but the saying is space is base. You cannot do the research if you do not have the facilities. And so we've also had a year where we've launched many facilities. These are just a few of them, but we have a new pharmacy, education center at UMES. We have a new health sciences complex at Towson, which is really magnificent. 4MLK is opening soon. I believe the grand opening is coming up right at the beginning of January. And that's actually a screenshot from the live building cam that is focused on the building. We had the very good fortune to be able to have an all-hands-on-deck research meeting there about a month ago and get a little bit of a hard hat tour. And then finally, I would be remiss if I did not identify my own alma mater's brand new facility, the planetarium at Salisbury University, which is quite an exciting new addition to campus. For those of you who haven't seen it, you should check it out. And then finally, as I mentioned before, when we talk about research strengths, it's done award by award. One grant after another, one project after another. And what we do in our committee meetings is we showcase those awards. We talk about them in detail, we introduce them, and these are just a few that we've reviewed over the last year. I'll call your attention to Dr. Zhang's Nitrogen Research Fellows Program called NICE. It's a global initiative to look at nitrogen pollution. That's a collaboration across multiple institutions. We're very heavily involved in getting funding around scholarships. We had a renewal of the Cyber Core program at the University of Maryland. And Power just funded, again, you know, our Institute for Health Computing from the state, which is also an incredible thing to have happen this year. We do instrument development, as I mentioned before. We're sending instrumentation to the moon, which is kind of the coolest thing I've ever heard. But anyways, you might have other things that you think are fantastic. We're very happy that Lori Harbin was the inaugural fellow to the Business Higher Education Forum, which is a national forum recognizing innovation. And so she was selected. We believe we have 2 new fellows this year that are going to be a part of this. We have an NSF Convergence Accelerator Award at UMCs, and so forth. And this is just, I don't know, 12 of the awards that we review. But in order to drive the numbers we're about to talk about, you have hundreds and hundreds of these. And so our committee tracks them. We try to find the ones that we think are going to be interesting. And it's important to do that because we also want our faculty to know that we're watching what they do, that we recognize and we value that effort. These are some metrics that we talked about a little bit earlier, but I'll go back over them. USM as a whole, driven very much by the College Park and UMB data, were $1.64 billion in expenditures in fiscal '23, the most recent data which is available. That's an increase from fiscal '20, which was $1.28 billion, so almost a $400 million increase in expenditures. I need to say this. At almost any institution I can think of, an increase would be a headline like this. An increase of, you know, 100 million would be a headline for a month. An increase of hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't even know where to start about what a big deal that is for this system. We're beginning to do a little bit of comparison with other systems, and I'm not going to preempt what those announcements will be, but just know that we perform better in expenditures than many systems that have more resources and more institutions than we do. And I think that's remarkable. I think it speaks to the fact that in Maryland we punch way above our class in terms of excellence, and it's because we have not only our powerhouses, but we have institutions like UMBC, which is an R1 institution. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But it's a tiny number of faculty driving $144 million of expenditures. So we're talking about really big impact that everyone is bringing to the table. Our research awards number is even larger, $1.8 billion. We have a 5-year average of 330 plus or minus inventions a year. That's a huge amount of discovery going on at the system. It translates into 21 patents across the USM, which makes us 21st in the world, 15th in the US, and 9th among public institutions, based on 108 patents that were granted in 2024. Again, that's a headline that should be right at the top of what we brag about in the system. Last year, the HERD showed that we were 19th in funding at UMB, UMD. I'll talk about the 18th ranking in a moment in the next slide. Sometimes we don't always highlight things like this, but Vice President Carl Steiner from UMBC told me yesterday, because he likes to remind me at every turn, that the University of Maryland is 4th in NASA funding and UMBC is 10th. He almost always leaves out the UMB part, by the way. He likes to focus in on the UMBC part, but we do a lot of funding from NASA. And finally, all of that drives economic impact. Our most recent report was in 2021. It showed $10.4 billion in impacts. We think that's going to be a much larger number the next time we do this report. It's on our agenda to do so. This is the breakdown of the HERD institution by institution. We have a goal. I have a goal. I'm going to push our colleagues to have every institution reporting to the HERD. And there's a reason why, and that'll be what I talk about at the end of this presentation. We should all be reporting. It matters. But as you can see, we have UMB, UMCP driving this at $1.385 billion in expenditures in '23, which ranks them 18th. For all universities, 11th among publics. UMBC, another R1 in our system, is at 144 million. UMC's is at 53 million. And I mention those four because in the new Carnegie classification, the threshold for funding is 50 million or above to be an R1 university. Now, you also have to have a certain number of PhDs, and I'll talk about that in a moment. We also do a lot of work to invest in innovation. So one of the projects that we're taking on in our committee is to bring together major funding resources. I mentioned that we have those 108 inventions that drive our reputation on the patent side, but we don't have enough venture capital in Maryland. We just don't attract the capital that we should to drive startups and the rest. And so we do work in a kind of whole of government manner with other agencies in state government and across the USM. We get dollars from the state at multiple of our institutions, and so we have these funds working together on a small task force to better understand where our investments are going. This is a map of how those funds support ventures across the state of Maryland. And we think there should be more ventures, and we want to understand more deeply how those two things go together to support economic development in the state. So stay tuned on more from this, but one of the things I like to point out is that virtually every institution is connected either to an incubator or to a fund or to both. And that is a primary driver of how our inventions move into startups and then move into job opportunities for our students, innovation for the state. This particular slide is a really important one because it should be more companies, and we should have private capital that is partnering with our public investments to grow the amount of impact that we can have. So I'm going to talk about Carnegie classifications. It won't take me long. But Carnegie classifications are now managed by ACE, the American Council on Education. They're doing a rethink on classifications. So for those of you who are not part of academia, this is one of the major ways in which universities are characterized and differentiated so that we can understand what is a community-serving institution, what is a research-oriented institution, what's a primarily undergraduate institution. What Carnegie decided is that their classification system was just not working and that it had fueled an arms race for everybody to try to jump into R1, and that was not a productive outcome. So they are proposing major changes. Their changes, if you see on the bottom of the screen where it says separate listing research, they're taking research out of the basic characterization. It used to be that you would think about a comprehensive university as a comprehensive research university. That is no longer the case. Now, you could have multiple characteristics of your institution. You could be a small, residential research institution. You could be an engineering-focused four-year degree institution. The idea is to help institutions better identify themselves in the landscape of higher education in our some 3,900 institutions across the country, but also to stop incentivizing the wrong thing around research and really recognize research as a component of the university. So the new system, very simple. To be a Research 1, what we would consider high research activity institution beginning in 2025, there are two criteria that matter. Spending $50 million on expenditures and having 70 PhDs per year. No more bell curve, no more crazy scientific algorithms to try to figure out if you're R1 or not. Simple. Thresholds, 50 million for funding, 70 PhDs. For R2, you've heard a lot about Towson's drive to R2. They're not the only institution that's close to being an R2. It's 5 million in funding and 20 PhDs per year. And a research designation happens if you have $2.5 million in funding per year, as reported to the HERD. So here's the thing. You report the metrics to the HERD survey, which both the Chancellor and I have talked about today, and then that's a driver of reputation across your U.S. News & World rankings, across your Carnegie ranking, across your Times Higher Education ranking, why we always focus on research expenditures in the research world, in academia, is because research expenditures, along with reputation, along with how your alumni do when they graduate, is a massively important driver of excellence and reputation for your institution and for us at the system level. So where are we going? This is my last slide. First of all, we want to get everybody reporting their herd. But more importantly, I'm here to tell you that every institution has $2.5 million in funding per year. We just need to recognize it. And when we do report that, we will be able to say that we are a research system. Now, I don't know if you get as excited about that as I do, but I talk about, my staff is so tired of hearing it from me, they just cry. Like, please don't talk about research system anymore. But I'm like, nope, we're a research system. We distinguish ourselves that way. As we talk about moving from excellence to preeminence, how do we distinguish ourselves? We're a heterogeneous system. We allow our institutions and we strive for our institutions to execute their vision that works for their student population, the expertise of their faculty. But if we all meet that threshold of 2.5, then that means as a system, everybody is striving with research as a platform, and I think that's quite remarkable. Under the hood a little bit more, we have multiple institutions that are knocking on the door of R2. It's been a strategic goal of Towson for quite some time. UMES, Bowie, Salisbury are right there. It's about the PhD production, not so much about the funding. And in the R1 business, we have 4 institutions that meet one of the criteria. And I'm doing all I can to encourage our institutions that don't yet have the designation to make sure they shore up on the PhD side. That's a strategic consideration for us as a system. The other strategic considerations for us are here. Fostering more engagement with students, making sure we do all we can to leverage collaboration across the system, making sure we measure our economic impacts in a more complete and holistic way so that we can tell the story of why research is a driver of success for the state of Maryland, not just for the system. In my office, we try to provide technical assistance to our smaller institutions so that they're not hampered by infrastructure challenges that keep them from achieving the goals that they want to from a research standpoint. Of course, we do a lot in the innovation sphere. We could do more. And finally, and I know that Regent Wood wants to talk about this for a moment, we want to celebrate our successes. We want to recognize them at a very high level with lots of attention and fanfare because we want to keep people in the game. We want to make sure that all of that hard work that goes into building our R&D enterprise is recognized. It's really important to do that for so many reasons. At the system level, we could do more. And so we're eager to have that conversation as well. So it's a celebratory time of the year. I thought it would be important to celebrate some of our successes. Happy to entertain any questions you may have.
Are there any questions for Michelle?
I would just like to thank you, Michelle, for your comprehensive and really interesting presentation. There's a lot of substance there, and it's very, very important. I just want to comment that you have a vast and long-lasting professional experience in research development, and we are so fortunate to have you provide your leadership in this area.
Thank you. Those are very kind words. I appreciate it.
Regent Hassan has a question.
Yeah, I should have asked that in the committee, but forgot to ask that. But now, since you brought it up, this nitrogen research and some of the water research that's going on, I know we are collaborating with Chinese and others worldwide. We have these problems locally in city and states right now. I mean, are those stakeholders also being part of your research, or is just they're not included?
Well, the simple answer is yes, but I invite President Marias Wilhelm to comment since it comes out of UMCS.
Yes, thanks very much. That's a good question. Definitely, nitrogen management is a key, perhaps the key concern in the Chesapeake Bay restoration effort, and that's something that we have been involved for a long time, which has a significant investment from the state. I will will actually say that it is actually our experience in the Chesapeake Bay restoration effort what has allowed us to explore these opportunities overseas, where we are being sought for that expertise that we have gained in the Chesapeake Bay restoration effort.
Okay, just a follow-up. Second question I had was the overhead cost reduction, which we are talking about in the legislature right now in federal government for research work. How does that going to impact going forward?
Yes.
In my dreams, it will not affect us at all, but it's just in my dreams.
It's a very concerning development. If, for those of you who may not have heard about some of the changes that are being proposed in the federal funding landscape, one of them is either a reduction or gross elimination of or reduction of F&A. F&A, simply said, is the costs that are reimbursed, that's a key word here, to universities for the facilities that they use and invest in to support research and the administrative costs that they spend on managing awards. F&A rates are capped at universities, so you're not allowed to actually get a full reimbursement for the administrative costs as it is. And facilities, I showed you some of the facilities earlier in the slides, and you've all seen those facilities on your campuses. We, the state, and our institutions put money into the building of those facilities, and then we're able to put those into a cost accounting for the federal government so that we can get reimbursed for the depreciation on those facilities that are used in support of a specific federal award. Remember, the facilities are not built for an award. We've built them, and then the federal government is using it to support research, which costs money, and it causes depreciation on the facility, and eventually the facility will get older and need to be replaced. So what I like to try to emphasize on F&A is that these are not made-up costs. They're real costs that universities incur to do research. There's a really excellent report by Koger that was just released. For anybody who wants to learn more, just email me and I'll send you the report that actually details not only what the costs are, but the increasing cost of managing research because of new regulations that have been put in place over the last 20 years. So every time you hear about a new regulatory component to research, like managing foreign influence is a huge area right now, that's something we have to do as a condition of receiving an award. We're not allowed to not do it. We can't get the award if we don't do it. But that's actual work that has to be done. It's somebody has to, a person, viscerally, a human being has to go and evaluate the submission of a grant, make sure that it complies with the terms and conditions of a particular federal sponsor, and in so doing, determine the eligibility of that institution to receive that award. Those are FTEs we have to pay for. We only get a small percentage back as it is with the F&A to support that effort. If F&A goes away, those are real costs that universities will have to absorb. So it may go away. In our system, our exposure is something in the $250 million to $500 million range. If that number goes away, we would have to suck it up and eat that cost. It's real money. So it's concerning. It may or may not happen, and if it does happen, we're going to have to factor that into the cost of doing research. It will affect our bottom line.
Regent Breslin.
I don't really have a question, Dr. Masucci, but I really have a comment. And I think recently I attended a USM Foundation board meeting on the campus of UMBC, and Dr. Shears-Aspey addressed us on that day, and she proudly made us aware of a research thing that's going on that I think you, when you were going through your roster of things, said this is the coolest one on here, I believe. She said, and that was the collaboration. So I thought, with NASA, I think. So I thought, Dr. Shears-Aspey, I think our Regents would love to hear what you shared with the foundation board.
This is why I love you, and you're my favorite Regent for right now.
Notice there was a temporal quality to it.
That's because you're sitting beside my other favorite Regent. That's all. This is wonderful. So we have, UMBC is one of 3 entities worldwide that has been chosen for the Artemis 3 mission, which is the next man-managed trip to the moon. And on that particular mission, there will be 3 experiments studying the environment. And one is from a company, one is from the University of Tokyo in Japan, one is from a company in Colorado, and the other is from UMBC. So we are the only U.S. institution, I love y'all, but we are the only U.S. institution, yes, so that's pretty exciting. So we literally will have one of the three scientific instruments studying the environment is going to the moon. So I like to tell people that the USM is going to the moon, and UMBC is just the way that we're doing that. So that's really exciting, and that was all work by our students and faculty. So. It's going to work. It's going to work. Thank you.
Any other, Drew?
Thanks for the presentation. I have a question inspired by a conversation with Chancellor Perman last night. How might the possibility of a federal government shutdown, which I hope doesn't occur, how might that affect our research enterprise across the system?
So when you keep in mind that something in the neighborhood of 2/3 of our funding is federal in nature, there's concern. My most recent meeting with federal partners as a part of a conference call yesterday pointed out that if there's a shutdown in the short term, that many of the government systems that we use to submit grants, review grants, and access data that we need, like data from this presentation, I would not have been able to download if the NSF website was shuttered, which would happen on a shutdown. So at least in the short term, it has to do with the timing of submissions, the timing of reviews, and what one could anticipate, depending on how long a shutdown would last, is that that would create a backlog in the processing of new awards, which means it would be, what typically happens is we get less funding in that particular year because there's just not enough time to spend it. The second thing that we would be concerned about is any kind of reporting and dissemination of work that would need to happen through those agencies' websites. So for instance, we're obligated to provide information on clinical trials. Those websites come down, and it just creates a lot of pressure and backlog for an already overworked staff. And then finally, federal awards for research aren't the only area of federal government spending that could affect universities. I don't want to speak to those other areas, but I'm sure our presidents are concerned about dollars to support student aid and that sort of thing.
Michelle, and scientists, our scientists regularly engage with program officers, our administrators need to engage with them, and there's nobody to answer the phone.
Exactly. I mean, me personally, I'm involved in organizing a conference in January. We typically have about 700 or so participants in the conversation for that conference, and a big part of it is to have a federal update so that all of our institutions that are part of that organization, 255 universities across the country, can know what's new in that federal agency's environment. Well, those feds will not be able to attend that meeting, and we will not then have a conduit of information about what's changing in the funding landscape to be able to prepare. Because again, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. Getting a grant is not a lottery. It's done by design. It's very intentional. When you fill out an application for a grant award, if you've ever done something like this, you know you're not writing like a 10-page paper. You're providing a 300-page document that shows what you want to do with the money, the budget you want to do, justification for your budget, your letters of support, all the certifications your institution must provide to show that it is eligible to receive the funding, due diligence on the faculty to show that they have met their conflict of interest requirements, CVs that have to be updated, prior results of work that you've done in the past, and any information that might help a reviewer to better understand the value of that work in the landscape of that particular field. So we're not talking about a term paper here. You're talking about a collaborative experience with that funding agency. And so to the chancellor's point, if there's not somebody on the other side of the phone and you're stuck on a technical issue, or the website that's the help desk gets turned off, you literally cannot proceed. I mean, there is no way forward. And so what that does to our institutions that rely on research funding is it means that they have to wait. And that wait could be a few months or it could be multiple months. And it depends on how long that wait is, whether it starts to hit the bottom line of that institution's fiscal bottom line in that particular year.
Thank you.
So we're concerned.
So thank you, Dr. Masucci. I think that this was extremely informative, and it's helpful to see all the work that we're doing and what we're giving back in terms of real jobs, real work experience, and real economic vitality to the state. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
The next item is the initial report from the HIDA task force. As we learned in the last board meeting, I stood up a task force to review high-impact economic development activities, or HIDAs. Andy Smerick graciously agreed to chair this task force, and so Regent Smerick, will you give us the update?
Yes, and we will be very brief, I promise. As you mentioned, you were good enough to set up this task force on HIDA. That stands for High Impact Economic Development Activities. That takes its name from associated legislation and board policy. The first meeting of this task force was held on Monday, December 9th via video conference, and I want to thank Chair Gooden and my fellow members of the task force for their participation. Members include Regents Breslin, Fish, Ganella, Seibel, and former Regent Bobby Neal. And I also want to thank Ellen Herbst and her team for the support they provided for the Regents as we studied this. So at this time, I would just like to ask Ellen to provide a summary of the first task force meeting and the next steps.
Good morning, and thank you. Thank you, Regent Smerick. During the task force meeting, we received an overview briefing of the goals, the original goals of the HIDA legislation and the Board of Regents policy, as well as having available the specific language in the law and policy. We reviewed a report of those entities who have received a HIDA designation from USM and which entities remain active. And just for information, 5 entities have received HIDA designations since the law was passed. 3 of them remain active. We then identified additional information we should gather. The fact that there haven't been that many HIDA designations since the law passed caused us to talk about, well, why is that? The goal of HIDA is to encourage activity, entrepreneurial activity, and support our startups, support moving technology out of the lab into the marketplace. And since it hasn't had a lot of uptake, we're curious as to why that is. So a word to the presidents. We'll be reaching out and surveying information in the general area and receiving your input on recommendations for any changes. The task force plans to meet again in the new year with the goal of preparing recommendations for the full board to consider in the February full board meeting. And with that, I will pause and see if there are any questions.
The only thing that I would add to this is just underscoring Ellen's point that this is a legislative device that can be used by the system and other entities in the state. And so it is there and it is available to us. And so in practice, though, we have found limited activity. So part of our investigation is the extent to which there is utility in this for us moving forward, or if there are other devices that can scratch the itch of making sure that our institutions can do these types of activities. So thank you.
Thanks, Ellen. So as we approach the end of our calendar year, I want to take a moment and reflect on the incredible efforts and contributions that have been made this year. It has been a year with many challenges, but then every year has its challenges. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to Greg for his warm hospitality, excellent dinner, excellent music, and the art exhibitions. To our regents, thank you for your unwavering service and stewardship. Your guidance ensures that we remain steadfast to our mission to provide a safe, affordable, quality education that is accessible to all. To the presidents, I'm deeply grateful for your visionary leadership, which continues to inspire progress across our institutions. To the system staff, your dedication and hard work behind the scenes are what keeps everything running seamlessly. And to the faculty and staff, your commitment to fostering the success and growth of our students is truly commendable. And finally, to our chancellor, thank you for your bold vision and tireless efforts in shaping a brighter future for us all. So as we prepare to welcome a new year, I wish each of you a joyous holiday season filled with peace, happiness, and the warmth of those you hold dear. Let's return refreshed and ready to take on opportunities and challenges of the coming year. Which brings us to the close, and the Open Meetings Act permits bodies to close meetings to the public in circumstances outlined in 3-305 of the Act, and to carry out administrative functions exempted by 3-103 of the Act. The Board of Regents will now vote to reconvene in closed session. Closed session will be in room 1105. The agenda for the public meeting today includes a written statement with a citation of the legal authority and the reasons for closing the meeting, and a listing of the topics to be discussed. The statement has been provided to the Regents and is posted on the USM website. Do I have a motion? Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? We are now closed.